Is retroactive jealousy, that nagging, relentless distress about our partner's intimate past, is it always a form of OCD? No. And here's an example of it being something else. Kelvin. He didn't particularly want to talk with me, but he said he was doing it for the benefit of his wife. She doesn't see her past the way I do, he said. She had these casual experiences when she was in her early 20s. And okay, she's admitted that, he said. But she insists that it doesn't trouble her and it shouldn't trouble me. And this is really bad for our relationship. Should she feel the same about it as you do, I ask. Well, yes, and she knows it. I tell her I'm not comfortable with what she got up to. She says it's irrelevant, but it's not. I think for a bit. So this is on her. Well, yeah, he says, she did it. The only thing she seems to regret is telling me. She says that, but this devalues her and it devalues us as a couple. Well, what's going on here? Can we call it retroactive jealousy? I think we can, because that's kind of a catch-all term for struggling with our partner's past. But does Kelvin have OCD? I'm not thinking that way. And does he have a point then? No, I'm not thinking that either. Something is different here. I do some digging. So how does this situation make you feel? Frustrated, he says. It's as if she won't see what's right from wrong, and she won't admit it for some reason. I do everything by the book, he said. There are no skeletons in my closet. I work hard. We're financially very secure. But if she won't align with me on this, what's it all for? Kelvin isn't really focusing on the details of his wife's past, which is positive, I guess, but he's obsessing over their values not feeling aligned. Their relationship, their home, it's all in order, but not this part. But that's not the reason why I don't see OCD here. He doesn't see any of this as problematic on his side. He's right, as far as he's concerned. He has the moral high ground. His problem is his wife won't agree, or apologise, or show regret for the past. And she doesn't have to, in my opinion, for what it's worth. With OCD, we have some awareness of where the problem lies. I know this is irrational. I know I'm overthinking this. Kelvin doesn't like the situation, but he sees his wife as the problem. And at times, the conversation felt like, can you help me to find some way to bring her around, to get more control over her, in other words? Now, we have to be careful with diagnosis. That's not really my job. We work with the person in front of us. But it was important for me to rule out OCD here, because otherwise I'd be offering Kelvin some sort of therapy that probably wouldn't fly. I'm thinking more along the lines of OCPD, Obsessive-Compulsive Personality Disorder. It's estimated to affect 2 to 8% of the population, and it's mostly men. Like most of these disorders, it has a rubbish name. Obsessive-Compulsive Personality Disorder makes it sound like OCD, and it isn't. And I'm not a fan of personality disorder. I think of it more as a type. In a nutshell, people with OCD have unwanted thoughts that feel bad, leading to compulsive behaviours or overthinking to try and resolve it and to feel better. People with OCPD are more preoccupied with orderliness, things being right, including them, and control. And it tends to pervade all areas of their lives, their work, their home life, their relationships. Whereas OCD thoughts are more about specific themes, specific obsessions. People with OCD usually have more awareness and they feel conflicted. And that's part of the bad feeling. It feels irrational at the same time. People with OCPD tend to feel bad because they're just not getting their way, and their way is right. OCD tends to be more acute. When it's kicking hard. OCPD is less debilitating, less time ruminating and doing rituals perhaps, but OCPD can still tie people up in knots. The obsession with order and things being done right can suck the pleasure and the purpose out of activities and out of relationships. Potential indicators of OCPD: lots of notes, lists, schedules and details, a kind of really rigid perfectionism, and inflexibility about the way things should be done. Often we see OCPD types excessively devoted to work and productivity. Sometimes an obsession with saving money too, and often a reluctance to ask for help or delegate things, because things need to be done the right way. And certainly a reluctance to have therapy too, and a tendency sometimes towards hypermorality and black and white thinking about things. And just like all these things, OCPD is a spectrum. We might recognise some of this, but not all of it. We can be a bit this way inclined to varying degrees of stress and difficulty. But people with OCPD have a vulnerability, just like people with OCD do. People with OCD are doing and thinking things to try and resolve their doubts. People with OCPD are trying to guard against having doubts. And just to complicate things even more, it's possible for OCPD types to also have OCD. I didn't say to Kelvin, "Have you heard of OCPD? Because I think that's what you've got." That's not my job. And it would take a full assessment to make that diagnosis. But I worked more on that basis. Sometimes it's a hunch, because therapy for OCPD is more about managing it than overcoming. If there's past trauma or attachment difficulties, we may well work on that, but we'll aim towards strategies for recognising when we're pushing too hard on orderliness and correctness, and having ways to cope with these kind of situations day to day. Because trying to dispute or argue with Kelvin's views and his feelings, that wasn't going to help. So it's quite similar to treating OCD in this respect. We talked more about being able to hold two viewpoints at the same time, and how Kelvin could use his obvious intelligence in this way. And that's an idea we often try to introduce, because it sometimes speaks to people with OCPD, and it's valid. Does it always work? No. Does it ever work straight away? No, not in my experience. But we build the strategies around that and see what sticks. Now, luckily, on this occasion, Kelvin did give more flexible thinking a go, because he wasn't void of empathy, and he did value his wife and his family. But learning how to agree with his wife, to differ on this aspect of the past, was key. Consigning it more to the past and having this agreement in place could feel like putting things in order. And that worked for him. And hopefully Kelvin is out there now applying this flexibility to other situations. It's about recognising and getting better at living with OCPD tendencies, and more flexibility can develop over time. So there we have something else underlying retroactive jealousy. And it's not either OCPD or OCD. There are sometimes other explanations too. But that's enough for today's video. I hope it was helpful, and thank you for watching.